Hi everyone, good evening. We will be working on one of the very important and also what we call simplest possible law that explains about the generations and how the maintenance of a particular trait can be taken care. So today we are going to work on Hardy-Weinberg principle. This will be part 1. Maybe in the other part we will be covering little more ideas about this particular concept. Now let us see what do we mean by Hardy-Weinberg principle. Just a small background. Hardy principle background came after the work of Mendel, then after the work of Darwin, and then the De Vries work. Like that, so many scientists and biologists have worked earlier, and they worked out many things. At that time, around 1940s, I think, the principle came into being. What does Hardy-Weinberg principle explain? It is known also by Hardy-Weinberg law sometimes, and sometimes it is called Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So 3 different names are there, but all of them would mean the same thing. Now, in a very simple way, we will try to know Hardy-Weinberg principle can be used to find out or to see if a population is evolving, whether it is evolving or whether it is stabilized, whether there is any equilibrium. These things can be explained based on certain statistical measures. And also it helps to find out the frequency of occurrence of alleles, frequency of certain genes, alleles, how many times they appear in several generations can be decided by applying the Hardy-Weinberg principle. These 2 biologists and scientists, they may be mathematicians also, they proposed 2 important algebraic equations to find out the occurrence of alleles in a particular population. First one is P plus Q equals 1. Here P refers to a particular dominant allele, one of the alleles, and Q refers to another allele, the recessive allele. So P refers to the dominant allele and Q refers to the recessive allele. So these 2 will be constant. One refers to a constant, will be constant only when certain conditions what these people assumed and suggested are met with. If a population can met with the assumptions made by Hardy and Weinberg, then the alleles will be constant in generation to generation. We will explain that little more in detail. Second one they proposed was P square, that is the alleles, 2 alleles. If it is a this applies to the diploid individual, and P square plus 2PQ plus Q square also will be constant, or that will be in equilibrium. So this is just the gist of the entire Hardy-Weinberg principle, and there are certain conditions which we are going to examine maybe in the next session. So if you want to understand the Hardy-Weinberg principle very clearly and very see, to explain it purposefully, we must know some background information. You should try to understand what do you mean by population. They talk about population. Population most of us know, but maybe sometimes we will not be in a position to interpret properly. So population, when we say, it refers to a group of similar species living in a similar geographic area which they can interbreed. That is the correct biological meaning of the word population. So they are talking about that type of population here. When they say population, they live in the same geographic area and they belong to same species and they can interbreed among themselves. That is the meaning of the population. Then the word gene. Gene, you all know that, already you studied. Gene is a segment of the DNA which can generate, which can produce a phenotype, and that phenotype will depend upon the gene. Gene is a segment of DNA that can code for a number of polypeptide chains. Then locus refers to a particular spot in the chromosome. If you write this is the chromosome and this is the centromere, and somewhere here we can say this is one locus. Like that there may be several loci, plural. This is one locus. So this is the locus, for example, one locus we have taken here. So locus refers to a small area in the gene where we can find an allele. Let's say we will call it P as an allele here in this case. So on this locus there is an allele. One allele means one or the other. There will be one triad here. If it is diploid, there will be one more present. I will use a different color so that it will be easy for you to understand. Supposing if I write one more, say chromosome, if it is a diploid one, this is another chromosome, and from here, and there will be one more, say allele or a part or a similar gene carrying for a similar character. Let's call it Q and let's call this P. So these two are in the same locus of the particular chromosome. If it is chromosome number 6, for example, chromosome 6, so it is on the same locus. That is the word locus. Gene pool refers to sum total of all the genes available either in the diploid or in the haploid case, whichever you are talking about it. So when we say about gene pool of a diploid individual where the paternal and the maternal chromosomes are there, it's called 2N or a diploid condition, and the sum total of all the genes is known as gene pool. So they go together as the chromosomes are passed on to the generation by in the reproductive stage by cell division. That's gene pool. And then coming to these two words, phenotype and genotype. Phenotype refers to the appearance of an organism, whether it is tall, whether it is black, whether it is green, yellow, whether it has got a curved hair or straight hair, or maybe in case of penguins, if you want to call it blue feet or yellow feet, like that. So that is the phenotype. Genotype refers to the type of genes that will be responsible for producing the phenotype. So if I take an example, supposing we say the long stem, if this is one character of the pea plant, then the genes represent will be either it will be supposing I call it L as a gene, it may be L type, or it may be L and a small l. It may be any of these things. That will explain the long stem. And long stem refers to a phenotype, what we see, phenotype, and what is the composition of the gene is called the genotype. This is the genotype. So this year also you should know when you want to understand the consequences of Hardy-Weinberg principle. Then comes frequency, this word. This word is normally used in the statistical analysis. Frequency refers to number of times whatever we are observing appears in a known time. In this case, we are talking about the life cycle, generations, one life cycle, second life cycle, or first generation, second generation, 10th generation, 20th generation, like that. So that is the frequency. Supposing if I think of a long stem or a yellow flower, how many times, how many in life cycles it is going to appear. If that plant produces 20 different individuals by reproduction, whether all the yellow flower will appear in all of them, talks about the frequency. The word equilibrium, which we are going to learn a little more in detail tomorrow or in the next session. Equilibrium talks about the stability, no change, no disturbance. If it is one, it is one. That's called the equilibrium. And then dominant, you already know, dominant is one of the triads that will appear and reappear in many generations or progenies. That is a dominant character. For a dominant character to appear, there must be dominant genes. If there is one dominant gene also, phenotype will be long or yellow. Genotype, and then the recessive type. When you say recessive type here, this is just exactly the opposite of it. Supposing if you see another plant which is a dwarf or a short plant in the same species, then that is the phenotype. That is the phenotype, and this phenotype will have the L. That is the genotype. So genotype always will be two pairs of recessive genes will produce the phenotype. If there is only one of that will become a hybrid. So that is the recessive. And diploid refers to two sets of chromosomes, 2n, or it's sometimes called 2x. Diploid number is called, this is a diploid number. Here 1 and 2 we have taken, one from the say male, one from the female, and these two are there in the zygote. Then this zygote is called the diploid zygote. If there is only one set, there is only one of them, you call it haploid. So we want to know about diploid here. Then you also understood the word homozygous. Homozygous refers to the thing which I have shown here. LL, that is the two dominant alleles are there. The two dominant alleles of the copy of the same gene. That is allele, one or the other. One of the allele is also dominant. Second allele is also dominant. In this case, one allele is showing for recessive character, second also for recessive. Supposing if I write like this, one L capital L, one small l, and in this case, one is a dominant one, the other one is the recessive one. That is another genotype. So, when you say homozygous, similar, homo means similar, zygote means zygote having two alleles of the same type, either two dominant or two recessive. And then heterozygous refers to, hetero means different, or it may be hybrid. We can call it either hybrid or heterozygous. In that condition, one of them will be dominant, one of them will be recessive. That is the genotype will be heterozygous or hybrid. And also you should know, to understand the Hardy-Weinberg principle properly, you should know what is the work of Darwin. We understood Darwin proposed the theory of natural selection that has been accepted, and we know natural selection. In the natural selection, the species will be stable, they will be stabilized, they won't change unless there are some changes in that. And Mendel law we should know. In the Mendel's law there are three laws, which one of them will be law of dominance. When you know the law of dominance, it tells that one particular character will be dominant always, and that will carry two alleles for that particular character. The gene will have, two genes will have the dominant alleles. That you should know. And he also talked about the genetic recombination that we have to know. And then Hugo de suggested the word mutation. Mutation also you should understand. Mutation refers to a sudden change in the genotype or the phenotype. If you say it is phenotype, then there must be a change in the genotype. So that is what mutation. So if you know these terms, then you should be in a position to understand the complete meaning and interpretation of P plus Q is equal to 1 or a constant. P square plus 2PQ plus Q square is also a constant. If you just apply that, if you say P refers to a dominant allele and Q refers to a recessive allele, in any case, it may be anything, then always it will be constant provided 5 conditions what they are proposed will met with. What those conditions are, we will be doing it in the next session. Similarly, P square refers to two alleles of the same type, and twice that will be a hybrid, and Q square will be again 2 alleles of the recessive type. So that is also second equation. So these two equations will explain that the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. That will explain that Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, or will be, what do you mean by that will be? It talks about the genetic variation in a population. That means there will be no genetic variation if it is in the equilibrium. It remains constant from generation to generation, as I said earlier, provided certain conditions are met by the population. So that is the work of Hardy-Weinberg. So I will just close it up here, telling that this will help us also to see if a population is evolving or stable, whether it is in equilibrium or in disequilibrium. It will also help us to find out the frequency of occurrence of the alleles in a gene on a locus. So these two, when you apply them, then we get the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium law that tells that the population will be in the equilibrium condition. There will be no genetic variation when 5 conditions are met with. What are those conditions? How the conditions will change anything, we will be talking about in the next session, where we discuss with examples of what do we mean by P plus Q equals to constant, and the another algebraic equation that's almost like A plus B whole square or P plus Q whole square, that is P square plus 2PQ plus Q is equal to a constant. So we will end up here, and the next session we will be working on the 5 important assumptions made by Hardy and Weinberg, and also we will take up an example how it is going to be used in the to find statistically to find out the ratio. And also you should remember Punnett square is also one important concept which I just oversight, I forgot to write here. So Punnett square also will help you to find out the ratio, whereas the Hardy and Weinberg the law will explain to you the frequency of the alleles. So So these two are slightly different, but you should know how to use Punnett square also to understand the Hardy-Weinberg principle. I stop here. Thank you very much.